calling Mr. Fusco.
Okay, we're ready to begin the Rules Committee. Again, those committee members are McKittrick, Fusco, Amobian, Connor, and Davis. We do have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Viviano. Bear with me just one moment. It has been a hectic morning and afternoon so far. I'd like to call the Rules Committee to order. We have some previous minutes to approve. If I could get a motion and a second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have two pieces that come before us today. The first piece is a resolution honoring the life of Mary L. Lombardo and expressing condolences and sympathy for the family on her recent passing and declaring an emergency. I think that's coming in from Mr. Hanna. I'll turn the yield to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to say that I am honored, and I was honored to not have known your mother, but I know so many people that knew your mother, and this resolution is for her, honoring the life of Mary L. Lombardo and expressing condolences and sympathy to her family on her recent passing and declaring an emergency. Whereas, with heavy hearts, we announce the death of the matriarch of the Lombardi family, Mary L. Lombardo, who passed away on January the 5th, 2025, at the age of 96. That's a long life, well lived, I must say. And whereas Mary was a 1945 graduate of South High School, and whereas Mary was an excellent florist, working at Hollinger Florists, Colonial Florists, and continued to design floral arrangements for all occasions. And whereas Mary was a woman of many talents and interests and an integral member of several community organizations and societies. And whereas Mary will be missed by her numerous family members in the community, the members of the Akron City Council mourn with the Lombardi family, to whom we extend our deepest condolences. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Akron, Section 1, that the Council hereby honors the life of Mary L. Lombardo and extends its deepest condolences and sympathies to her family on the occasion of her passing. Section 2, that the Clerk of Council is directed to transmit a copy of this resolution to Mary L. Lombardo's family. This resolution is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of public peace, health, safety, and welfare for the reasons that this resolution recognizes and honors the life of Mary L. Lombardo on the occasion of her passing, and provided this resolution receives the affirmative vote of 2/3 of the members elected or appointed to council, it shall take effect and enforce immediately upon its passage and approval by the mayor. Otherwise, it shall take effect and be enforced at the earliest time allowed by law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hanna. There any other committee members or council members that, Councilwoman Davis?
Thank you. I'd like to express my deepest condolences to you, Phil. Didn't know your mom. I had the opportunity to read the obituary. I'm a South High alumni. She was, so I know she was good people. And I'd just like to say, well done, good and faithful servant. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I know Councilman Lombardo has something to say, but before he does, just wanted to make a couple comments myself. I did not know that she worked at Colonial Forest. Our family has used Colonial for a long time. My brother-in-law is good friends and went to school with some of the family members. So I'm sure that many of the times that I've stopped in there over the past, I probably crossed paths with your mother. I learned a lot about her and your family at calling hours and heard some very impressive stories. So I'm sure that she had a great influence on the great person that you are, Councilman.
Well, thank you.
And so I yield my time to you, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you to everybody. Yeah, I spoke at the funeral mass, obviously, the eulogy, and I said that, you know, she had many talents. You know, back in her day, it wasn't really given the opportunity to attend college, and so they did the best they can with you know, their homegrown talents, and one of them was floral designing. The other was, you know, sewing, and like I said, the patterns just weren't limited to female patterns. I had the best damn looking leisure suit for my 8th grade graduation, ready to roll. So, you know, she did a lot of that, matching outfits for the kids and the grandkids, right down to the baby doll, right? When there's extra material, there's always room for a baby doll. So, and between the cooking and just the family get-together, so she, you know, no doubt will be missed. But besides the talent, I just mentioned, like I said in the eulogy, that I would just want her to be remembered as a team player. You know, and it's easy to fast forward her life, you know, to say, oh, wow, 6 kids. There definitely was teamwork going on. But it started when they were married in 1951, making huge sacrifices to stay home to raise the kids, raise us. And it was only after I started school, that's when she went to work. And she was good. She retired, but so many other florists knew that she was at home and would call her out of retirement to come work for them. So it went from Hollinger to Colonial to Greenbrier to Silver Lake. I mean, she retired 7 times. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, we'll definitely miss her. For all intents and purposes, she was 97. Her birthday was yesterday. So we still went out to eat and celebrated and just thanked her for the life that she gave us. And I hope that I'm just as good as that as far as being a team player with what I do, whether it's here or, you know, in my own home. So thank you for bringing that forward. Appreciate it, and thank you to all who for your thoughts and prayers during the last week. Thank you.
Well said, Councilman. Could I get a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will get that out tonight, and hopefully somebody will make a motion for council as a whole. So our next piece coming in today is a resolution formally recognizing the tragic loss of the life of Jasmine Tucker, expressing deepest condolences and sympathy to the family of Jasmine Tucker, and declaring an emergency. The piece is offered by Councilman Garrett, who cannot be here today. So therefore, I'd like to take time on this for now, and when he's available, we will address this at that time. So if I could get a motion for time. Is there a second for referral? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Clerk Viviano, could you do a roll call, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
The motion is for time. McKittrick,
Aye.
Fusco, Amobian,
Aye.
Connor, and Davis. The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you very much. There's nothing else to come before rules today, and we will be adjourned. Thank you.
Our next committee today is the Public Service Committee. Those committee members are Kamer, McKittrick, DeShazier, Bolden, and Lombardo. And we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, thanks for your patience, everyone. We're ready to begin the Public Service Committee. Again, those committee members are Kamer, McKittrick, DeShazier, Bolden, and Lombardo. We do have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I'd like to call the public service meeting to order. All members are present, and we did hold a meeting last week. Can I get approval of those minutes, please?
So moved. Second.
All in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, well, thank you. We have 4 new pieces in front of us today, and if I could ask Sarah to read in the first, please.
Sure. Item number 7 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into an agreement or agreements and/or legislation with the Ohio Director of Transportation for certain improvements in the city of Akron on State Route 261 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Sarah, and I do see we have our Service Director, Chris Luttle, with us. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. Yes, this is an ODOT agreement. They are going to make improvements to the All-American Bridge. Some of us call it the Y Bridge. Some of us are old enough to remember the viaduct. Anyway, they are going to do some extensive patching on the surface course of this bridge, but the biggest thing is to replace the fence. I think we've all seen that fence is rotting away. Their standard fence replacement on all their projects is a 6-foot anti-vandalism fence or non-climbable. We feel it's important since it is an 8-foot fence. Currently, we're going to replace it with an 8-foot fence. So this project will start later this spring. It probably will go through the summer with all the work they have to do. When we did talk to them about this, we agreed to pay the difference between the 6-foot and 8-foot, which our share is going to be $288,000. But as you could see, this is about a $4 million project that they're doing. So this is authorization, as we do on all these ODOT projects, to give them authorization to work in our city. And like I said, most of this project is going to be funded by ODOT on the rehab of the surface and the replacement of the bridge. They will also, the parapet, that will all be painted. There's a bunch of rust stains going down. They'll recoat that as well in this project. So with that, I will take any questions.
All right, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Any questions or comments? I see Councilman Lombardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Little, you keep saying 8 foot. In here, it says 7.5. I mean, we're going to go 8 foot.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I do think, just wanted to make a comment, I do think the investment from our side is well worth it. I'm sure, was there a mention of a warranty in here as far as the fence?
I mean, this is something that they will own, okay? So they will hold the warranty and they will maintain it.
Okay. Yep. Looks good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Looks
And
good.
obviously, when we did the project back in the day, it's all LED, and those lights will stay on those parapets, and all the overhead are LED also. They will remain.
That's good.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman DeShazer.
Yeah, with the new technology of the day, just out of curiosity, what's the lifespan or expectancy of something like this to hold up? I know that there's a sense of advanced materials that are being used to maintain and sustain fences and bridges and the metalworking and the infrastructure in the bridge to make sure that they hold up.
Good question. This was part of a stimulus package back in when we had stimulus money with President Obama. And this fence company was out of Michigan, and they were low bid that ODOT picked. Well, it was basically that fence is made of steel, and it was going to be powder coated and inside and out. Well, you could see how it rusted. The standard for ODOT is galvanized. Galvanized doesn't rust like steel. So that's what they use. It isn't going to be as attractive as the one there, but the one there now is rusting out and it's making a mess of the stain. So it's going to be their standard, the smaller openings so you can't climb it type fence. So it will be galvanized, so it will last a lot longer than this.
So is that the bleeding that we see
Yes, sir.
on the
Yes.
concrete surfaces?
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
Thank you, guys. Any other questions or comments? Chris, is suspension of the rules okay on this one?
If we could, please, sir.
Committee?
I'll make that motion to suspend the rules with a favorable report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for suspension of the rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. We'll suspend the rules on that. Next one, Sarah, please.
Item number 8 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids or requesting and receiving requests for proposals for underground utility locating services for the Engineering Bureau and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Sarah. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. I'm sure you council members remember back in September, we passed similar legislation to mark sewer and water excavations. This piece will allow us to bid and award not only, this will be for all our street lighting and all our traffic engineering. So every time they have to dig, they have to call too. So we're going to take this piece of legislation and the piece we passed back in September, or you passed in September, and bundle us together to try to get a better bid price. Every time that a utility is going to work in our right-of-way, whether it's gas or electric or fiber, there has to be, they send us a ticket, we have to mark all the utilities. So sometimes we have 4 departments sending a different person out from water, sewer, traffic, or our communications team. This will allow us to hire a contractor to go out and mark all those utilities at one time. They'll have access to our undergrounds. So that's what we're looking for in this legislation, is to allow us to bid this work out.
All right, thank you, Chris. Committee members, any questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? All right, Chris, is consent okay?
Yes, sir.
Committee?
Motion for consent.
Second?
A motion and a second for consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, we'll put that on the consent agenda. Moving on to number 9. Sarah, if you could read that in, please.
Item number 9 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of publicly advertising for bids with Xylem Inc. for the purchase of water meters and transmitters as part of the citywide water meter replacement program and declaring an emergency.
Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We're down to the end of our water meter replacement program. We are going to set up accounts with Xylem, who did supply the water meters to UMS, who was our contractor. So this legislation will allow us to directly purchase the last 6,000 meters needed to complete the project. There's been a supply chain issue between the contractor and Xylem. We've worked on this probably for about a month between our finance department, our water department, our communication department, Darren Rosnick. So we're going to set up this account, buy the last 6,000, hold them in our inventory, and as this will just close out the rest of the project. To give you an update on the project, we've been in a lot of your neighborhoods. I think we're doing a lot of work in Ellet right now to close things out, but there's always the chance at one of your ward meetings, if you bring this topic up or you want us to come and speak. I never got mine, you might hear. We never, they didn't respond. They didn't respond to the letter. We called. So if there are ones out there, please let us know if there was one missed, because we need to get these water meters replaced in their homes. We also are working directly with the customer informational system. We're going to take that contract over because this is going to be a long-term contract with them. And you'll see legislation later about going and just partnering with them for all our the customer information. So our goal is to get these meters all installed by late spring. And then we're going to start with the new customer information, and we'll come, like I said, come to your ward meetings because the bills are going to change and what the looks of them are, which are going to be a lot easier for your customers to understand. So, but this piece of legislation is just by those last 6,000 meters.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, committee members, any questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? Any other council members with us? All right, suspension of the rules on number 9, okay?
Excuse me.
Mr. Hanna
Oh.
Mr. Hanna has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Hanna, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You say the bills will change. Will there be an increase?
No way
Okay, it's just the way
Just
that
the
bills
explanation
will
of,
look. Okay.
how the breakdown goes, yes. Good question.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Anyone else? Hopefully I'm not missing anyone. Okay. Mr. Luddle, is suspension of the rules okay on number 9?
Yeah, that would be great, sir. Well, since we're off next week, we want to get this purchase order going and purchase these meters.
Okay. Committee.
Motion for suspension of the rules?
Second.
A motion and a second for suspension of the rules on number 9. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed on that? Okay, sounds good. Moving on to our final piece of the night, number 10. Sarah, if you could read that in, please.
Number 10 is a resolution supporting the Ohio Municipal League's challenge of AT&T's tariff application at the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Sarah. And I do see we have our law director with us today.
Yes, so the Ohio Municipal League and the Ohio Municipal Attorneys Association both reached out and asked that we participate in supporting an effort to turn down AT&T's tariff changes. AT&T has recently engaged in a sort of a public information campaign to make it seem like the purpose for this is just to cause a municipal entity to have to pay for relocation of their facilities within our right-of-way when it's a public beautification project. The problem is that is not what the tariff language says. The tariff language essentially says that AT&T is asking that Anytime a public entity asks them to relocate their facilities within our right-of-way, that we pay for it. And that basically puts the burden of that on all of the taxpayers in the local municipality rather than just the folks who have AT&T services. Hence the reason why we are inclined to participate in that effort to reject that change to the tariff language.
So if I could add, the timing on this, we just found out, is January 18th. So we would like to suspend the rules with a favorable report because we do object to this. It's no different we own our own water utility, obviously. We own all the water lines. But when we get outside our municipality, and it's happened the last 5-6 years, Sam, you probably remember when they did the improvements down on Canton Road, they were putting in storm sewers. We were in ODOT's right-of-way, and they made us move our water main out of the right-of-way, and we had to pay for that. And this is no different. If they're in our right-of-way, AT&T, then they have to pay it. Now, if we would go to AT&T, like the law director said, oh, we don't like those overhead lines, we want you to put them underground, well, that's a beautification thing. Yeah, we would consider moving that and would figure it in the program. But when we do North Main Street, if they put up new poles, they'd want us to pay. And that's not, they've always paid for that, and this is something that we definitely want to oppose, this request that they have. So I will take any questions. She can answer any other questions that you have.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you too for presenting. I definitely would encourage my colleagues to think about maybe adding their name to this, or possibly this evening passing this as council as a whole. So committee members on public service, any questions or comments for Deb or Chris? I don't see anyone. Okay, any other council member? I see Councilman Fusco stood up.
Yes, thank you, sir, for the recognition. The reading over this, oftentimes what we'll do is we'll forward this on to, and I'm sure OML is going to do the same, but maybe we might want to memorialize this and send it off to maybe county council, maybe our state rep folks, maybe other municipalities, obviously, that would have some skin in the game in terms of this particular piece. I don't know, if we want to put that, again, memorialize it within this particular resolution, but I think it makes sense to maybe do that. I don't know if the clerk has any, do you think we should, or just go ahead and do that on its own?
I'm happy to send it on if you would like. You don't necessarily need to amend the legislation to make that happen.
Thank you, thank you. I would just recommend, I don't know if anyone has any other ideas, but maybe some of the cities at least within Summit County, I don't know, or ask OML if they're gonna do the same, but at least county council perhaps.
We actually already know which cities in our jurisdiction within Summit County are going to participate in this, and the vast majority of them are. Okay. And so but it's definitely something that we could send to county council. We can send it to, it's obviously going to go to the OML. We can send it to the OMAA. Yeah.
As well as our state folks.
Yes.
I guess our state representative folks, so cool. And perhaps the governor, I don't know. Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Fusco. Any other questions or comments? Anyone? Do you see anyone, Sarah?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. Just want to make sure. All right. I know Chris mentioned suspension of the rules, and I'm in favor of that. So I'll make the motion for suspension of the rules.
Second.
All in favor of suspension of the rules?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, we'll present that this evening, and that's all we have is 4 pieces in front of us today, and
Thanks,
we
y'all.
are adjourned.
Our next committee today is the Public Safety Committee. Those committee members are McKittrick, Kamer, Lombardo, Hannah, and Davis. We'll give everyone just a minute here.
I'd like to call the Public Safety Committee to order. We have previous minutes to be approved. If I could get a motion in a second.
Motion to approve previous meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a couple pieces that come before us. The first piece is an ordinance amending Title 11, Business Regulations, Chapter 111, Regulations Governing Specific Businesses, Article 1, Ambulances and Emergency Medical Services, Section 111.008, Charges for Emergency Medical Services and Other Public Safety Services of the codified ordinances of the City of Akron and declaring an emergency. Chief Henderson, we have the chief here with us today.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So what this is, we want to align our pricing with other municipalities within our county and within the state. That's what this is. And soft billing, we use a company called Life Force. Soft billing is not a bill that goes to residents in the city of Akron. Is that better? Soft billing is a soft bill that Life Force charges. They send the bill to either Medicaid, Medicare, or your private insurance companies. But the residents of Akron does not receive a bill. Non-residents do for the services that we provide. So that's what this is, that's what we're asking for. And it's tiered from BLS all the way to ACLS 1 and 2. Sorry, I have a sinus infection. My throat is a little druggy. But any questions about any of that?
Thank you, Chief. Committee members, just so you know, Chief Henderson and Chief Karakis reached out earlier to try to explain a little bit of this, sent some comparisons to other municipalities. So this really, in the mix of things, very similar to what most other municipalities in our region are doing. Some charge a little more, some charge a little less, but we're not going to be up toward the top or right at the bottom, but it's all very similar, and it makes sense as what was explained. Are there any committee members that have any questions in regard to this? Any other committee member or council members? Suspension of the rules on this to get this implemented, sir?
Please, yes.
Okay, if I could get a motion for suspension of the rules?
I'll make that motion to suspend the rules with a favorable report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, we'll get that out tonight. Thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you.
All right, we have another piece to come before us today, and it is ordinance authorizing the mayor as designee to enter into an agreement or agreements with Summit County to extend the term of their intergovernmental agreement for the boarding of City of Akron prisoners and declaring an emergency. Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This piece of legislation coming before you allows us to enter into an agreement to extend our contract with the county jail through the end of June to allow them to continue in negotiations for the future. So what this represents is half of our annual traditional payment. This $2.4 million is not an increase and just represents the first 6 months of this year.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from any committee members? Any council members? Mr. Wheeler, what's your pleasure on this, sir?
Consent, please.
Okay, could I get a motion for consent?
Make a motion for consent.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to yield a few minutes to Mr. Angeloni here.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee, members of council. I just wanted to take a quick opportunity. I understand that with respect to the request for a service contract with Paul Weiss firm for use of force review, I just wanted to thank members of council leadership. I understand that they've had some productive conversations with the administration. And just to inform the body, the rest of you all, that we would be requesting additional time on that piece at this time, hopefully with communications ongoing with City Council. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Angeloni. Yes, there are two pieces on the regular agenda for public safety, and they were both be requests for continued time this evening. So, and is there anything else to come before the committee? If not, we will be adjourned. Thanks very much.
Our next committee today will be the Budget and Finance Committee, and it will begin at 3 o'clock. Those committee members are Lombardo, Amobian, Fusco, Boyes, and Bolden. Again, that's the Budget and Finance Committee, and it will begin at 3 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, we're ready to begin the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Those committee members are Lombardo, Amobian, Fusco, Boyes, and Bolden. We do have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'd like to get started with the Budget and Finance meeting, and with that, I need a approval of minutes from our last meeting.
So moved.
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Very good.
Aye.
Thank you. We have one item coming before us, and that's an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of publicly advertising for bids with Navient to provide on-base production support, license, maintenance, and project implementation services, and declaring an emergency. We have Mr. Wheeler here, right? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take this one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This piece of legislation, as you mentioned, is for Navient and OnBase. OnBase represents our document management system. I believe it is what you also use on your iPads to look at legislation and everything else. We use it citywide, all departments, all divisions. And this piece represents not only the licenses for the software, but also additional modules like the HR piece that was presented, I believe, late last year. And this is a renewal for 3 years. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Yes, for 3 years. This is what the contract's for. Okay. Is there any questions with any committee members or any council members? Very good. What would be your pleasure?
We are looking to expedite this, so if we could pass it on suspension, we would appreciate it.
Okay. Can I get a motion for suspension of the rules?
So moved.
Second.
A motion is... Okay, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. We'll see
Thank you.
if that's suspended. Thank you so much. So with that, what was on the agenda was only that one piece, but we are going to have a ARPA presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you can continue.
Wrong button. I love technology until I can't get my screen to share, and we just tested this.
Okay. Got that email? You have it?
Is it not? Thank you. So now that the obligation deadline of December 31st, 2024, the big milestone in terms of getting funds allocated under the federal ARPA obligations, we thought we'd come back to council one last time to explain how we got there, what we did, and where we're going between now and December 31st, 2026. With me here, I have Mitch Lindstrom, who you've previously met. He's our consultant at Guidehouse, who they have been really diligent about keeping us track and really allowing us to maximize the use of the funds from the federal government. I'm going to pass it over to him to kind of explain where we're at this point.
Thank you, Mike. Excuse me, I'm getting over a little bit of holiday left over in my voice. So we'll start with where the city's is at financial-wise, right? So you had previously received $145.3 million award from the federal government, the U.S. Treasury. Up to this point, 100% of those dollars are committed and 100% are obligated, and you have spent just over 80% of those, which comes out to $116 million. So that is the snapshot as we head into 2025. I do want to...
Do you want us to ask questions at the end or while you're talking?
I'm happy to take questions.
What's the difference?
Go ahead,
What's the difference between
Councilwoman Mobian. I didn't see your hand up, but go ahead.
What's the difference between committed and obligated?
Great question. Obligation has a very specific definition under the final rule that the Treasury published, and so nothing is obligated until there is a contract that is fully executed. So even a motion or an idea that a project was started, like that, those loose terms are a commitment. But once there is a contract in place, a legal agreement, that is fully executed, that is what constitutes obligation.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll take it a step further. The city has taken a more nuanced view of it as well. Not only do we have to have it fully executed contract, but we define it as having been reported with the federal treasury on one of the quarterly reports.
Okay. So you can't change this at all?
As of December 31st, 2024, we can no longer make changes at this time.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And so, as we shared in, I believe it was February of last year, we had talked through the approach to handling an obligation strategy, right? Knowing that past the date of January 31st, 2024, things are frozen for all intensive purposes. And any money that was unobligated at that time would need to be allocated and sent back to the Treasury after April of this year, and or if a project were to say maybe not spend all of its funding, the portion that it didn't spend wouldn't be able to be moved to another initiative. You would have to just freeze those funds and send those back as well. And so, noting the permanence of that, we often require a level of rigor and intentionality going into a funding cliff such as this one. And so typically we propose and did propose back in February a three-step approach that we've been doing a lot of work in partnership with some of the ARPA community partners and contractors and awardees, and even more with the city's finance team and project teams associated that are linked to various projects that are funded by the ARPA allotment. And so really this followed three steps. First, we started with clear definitions of what an obligation is and the consequences associated with not obligating those dollars. Providing clarity not only internally to all project teams, but also externally to grantees. That communication took various forms of training and kind of user guides and whatnot. In addition, we also created a shared understanding of where their current project budgets, obligations, and kind of performance progress were at that point in time earlier last year. We then moved into a monitoring phase that took really all the way up until the first week of December. Continued analysis of various initiatives and projects, both looking at their financial performance, but also their performance against what they agreed to in the cases that those funds were obligated. We requested additional project budgets, timelines from both internal and external stakeholders. We estimated and dug in to issues that arose that limited spending or obligations like supply chain issues, change orders, fluctuating staff time, and numerous other things that impact cost. And then Guidehouse, using a risk-based approach, both quantitative and qualitative information, made some recommendations to projects that the city should reconsider identifying other funding sources with. And that was largely driven by the lack of certainty if those projects could get obligated by the deadline fully, and or more importantly, are we certain they're going to spend that exact amount? Is there a chance they could spend less than that amount, et cetera? And so we moved into step 3 over the last few weeks, which is ultimately leaning into general grants, federal grants management best practices, which looked at maximizing the use of the city's revenue loss dollars, which is a specific provision of the Treasury's final rule, which we can happy to answer questions on that. And then also identifying other expenditures that the city has that are eligible and easier to quickly obligate, more predictable and easy to spend, providing flexibility for the city down the road.
So this slide represents what we have taken to maximize the dollars to ensure not only we don't lose anything, but we appropriately obligate everything at December 31st, 2024. So what we're calling this is our substitution for projects. And primarily it was around projects, like Mitch said, that we had uncertainty. So the parks, pools, and community centers, there's a chance that we could see $3 million at the end of the project. Now, granted, odds are we probably won't see the full $3 million, but instead of taking that chance and having to return any dollars to the government, we are unobligating it and taking fixed costs that we have already know that will be expended in 25 or 26, and we're moving those in so that way it's dollar for dollar. We're not spending any money.
I'd also add with the parks, that 3.7 number, a portion of that is your own city's staff time, so engineering staff time, which, as you all may know, is incredibly hard to predict for multi-year, multi-phase capital projects. And so there is uncertainty that some may have considerably less staff time needed than others, just depending on what they find in the ground.
And so what we did, once we had identified the projects here on the left, these previously anticipated obligations, we went through the 24 and 25 operating budgets, which we'll be bringing to council shortly for 25, and looked at these fixed fees, fixed contracts that we can move in, primarily for a one-time basis. So we have our county health agreement. That is a contract that we know is coming up every year. We know we're going to pay $4 million. It's a perfect example that we already have authorization from council from when it was consolidated back in 2011 and then renewed in 2013. And then we also have our previous jail agreement. Earlier today, we talked about an extension of time for negotiations. This actually does not reflect that extension of time. This is the amount owed for the second half of 24. This is a separate piece. And then primarily, one of the bigger ones, projects that are in play that we can move over easily, is the court modernization project for the clerk of court's office and the judges. So Tyler Technologies Odyssey recently came through in a later part of last year with an amendment to the contract. Their expected timeline and go live is 2025, and we know we're going to be spending this $1.6 million between the two projects. This represents not only the original contract that they're still implementing, but the amendment that we just executed. We're going to move over our annual support for 1 year for victim assistance program. And then, most interestingly, you'll see Sasaki on here. So there is a city match of $240,000, and we can maximize our dollars, and we can actually use funds and match it without any risk of loss on that. And finally, since there is considerable expenses related to ARPA auditing, we elected to move our audit expenses in for 25 and 26. And both sides equal this $8,821,996.50. I'd like to take a moment to pause here for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler, because that was my question. So I have a couple of them. But on the left, even though there's not a total, that totals $8,821,000.
Correct. This is both on both sides.
And it was previously anticipated obligations. Got it. So basically, there's going to be like that extra money. We'll just take the parks, and there may be some extra money. And so now that we could have those savings, if you will, we could then allocate it to the right side.
So that's
right?
exactly that's where we're going.
That's the theory
with this.
of all
That
this.
is,
Okay.
that is the
I have
theory
another
of this.
question. As Councilwoman Amobian said, what's the difference between committed and obligated?
Yeah.
And I believe the answer was that obligated was when you had like a contract
Executed.
in play.
Yes.
Yeah.
Legal agreement.
Okay. All right, now we're going to go back to this slide.
Yep.
Yes.
That use of force study, there's not like a contract in place for that.
No, that was one that we were anticipating. So that is one that would require council approval regardless. And because it didn't meet the obligation deadline of 12/31/24, that was $768,000 we could have been leaving on the table. So this allows us to basically earmark the funds, even if council does not vote for it and move forward with it. But it basically allows us to budget for it and not have to worry about how we're going to get to that funding source.
Okay. All right. But again, it's all about kind of savings on the left. Well, it could be used for these other substitutions.
In theory, it's a one-for-one.
Yes.
But the reality is it allows for flexibility and reduced risk of any, penny of the federal funding at hand needing.
Well, we just don't want to give any money back.
Yes.
Okay.
We are aligned on that vision.
Got it.
And
We'll
ultimately
make
that-
use of it. We'll make use of it. Okay.
Ultimately, that's what our message is we do not anticipate having to give any money back.
Right.
And plus, we have a new federal administration that's incoming. So what we want to do is make sure that we have all of our contracts in a row, all of our, I's dotted, T's crossed. And when we file the final report, there's no chance that whoever will come and look for these funds. In the interim final rule, and even some additional guidance from the Governmental Accountability Office, it has all been designed to kind of protect cities that have taken this approach. So we are not the only municipality who have done this. Locally, Cleveland has done something similar by effectively moving in a lot more salaries than we did up front. We're just kind of taking this approach at the end rather than the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I see Councilwoman Linda Amobian has a question.
Yeah, thank you. My one question was the one you asked about the use of force study. I guess what I'm trying to understand now, with the caveat that you added to his definition of obligated, that you have sent something to the federal government that gives them a fully executed list.
Oh, no.
Of something you said, Mr. Wheeler, that would not have been the case in his use of force study. Are you following me?
Well,
made
you
a
froze up.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that? You froze up.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's just your screen froze. So.
Oh, okay. I don't know why I'm doing that on your side too. There appears, maybe I need to change my gadget. But anyway, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain now? Mr. Wheeler, you gave a caveat after it was the definitions of committed and obligated. You said there was a fully executed list of something that was sent to the federal government or somebody. So this use of force study, was that part of that?
No, the use of force study was not part of it because we didn't have a fully executed contract, if I understand the question correctly. And I'm going to take a guess that the question you were trying to ask was, do we have a list of projects that we have reported and obligated on? And the answer to that is yes. We do it on a quarterly basis along with our expenditure reports. And the use of force study, and to a lesser degree, some of the home repair warranty work that we had set aside and talked about before, aren't concrete obligations that we could set in stone. This is not intended to reduce or eliminate the budgets for these projects. This is to ensure the funding for these budgets to make sure they continue.
Yeah, I hope we have no intention at all. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I hope we have no intentions of removing any of that home improvement money because I don't know if we have enough for the projects that we've agreed to. But my other question I have is things that were, for instance, the public health. This contract or agreement between the city and the county was executed back in 2013. So these funds would have been in the budget already.
If I understand the
So
question
are we
correctly.
using these funds for something else or are they going to?
No, we are not
Okay.
using these funds for anything else. These are dollars, especially the county health agreement. That contract specifically is one that goes on for perpetuity. And this is we're supplementing 1 year. So it's just, instead of previously using the general fund dollars, we're going to be using the ARPA funded dollars for 1 year. In 2026, it will be back in the general fund under the public health budget.
Yep. And the U.S. Treasury's final rule allows for governments to use a certain.
Okay, what about the medical debt relief? Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to highlight specifically on those operational expenses, the U.S. Treasury allows for cities like the city of Akron to use funding for anything that would be considered a provision of government service. And so the public safety and public health contracts you see are some of the larger, most predictable operational expenses that the city has.
And I think I'm going to anticipate your next question about medical debt relief. At this time, we have no intention of reducing medical debt relief. And with ongoing conversations, and we've involved council leadership, our goal is to still spend the full $500,000. Right now, Undo is committed to doing at least $250,000 in 2025. If we cannot make it, we would like to fund the remaining piece to Akron Cares to provide utility assistance. And then we would still like to keep the door open using other funding sources to get to the full $500,000 if they can accommodate it going into 26 or at a later date for that matter. So again, our intent is not to cut any budgets here.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Is
Chair.
there any other questions from any council members or committee members? Mr. Fusco.
I just want to say a couple quick things briefly and then have a question. Just number one, whenever this first came out, this council and others, received a lot of criticism about hiring you all Guidehouse. And understandable. This is a new thing. It was a new thing then. But the goals that we set then, you could see today are being reached, at least in terms of not returning anything back to the feds. And, there's some things that we may disagree on in terms of, how it was spent or where it was spent and, was it a successful program or not a successful program? That's always going to be up for debate. And I appreciate the transparency piece referencing this in terms of, there's no vote. We're not going to vote on anything here, as we all know. We had turned that over to the mayor and gave that to him. So and it seems as though that's worked out fairly well as well. And I know some cities out there are struggling a bit in terms of meeting those deadlines. The only ask now is that we had spoke about in quite a bit initially and throughout the process is measuring and how are these programs doing, because we're going to have to figure out next steps whenever 26 is over and during 26 and 25, those next steps, especially with regards to some of our, the things that were victim assistance programs and so on, and all those measurements that we had spoke about, and how we want to proceed forward after the funding is depleted, I think is something that we're kind of anticipating and waiting for.
So we can provide that, and I will say some of it is, easily measurable. We have two new pools coming. We've redone Ed Davis. We're working on Patterson and Reservoir.
Those are easy layups.
Those are easy.
Yeah.
I would also like to recognize that, the cameras program, the doorbells.
Yes.
We may not have measurable results, but it's that feeling that the city cares about the safety of the public, and we were able to do that between council and the administration to distribute these cameras. That was 3,000 cameras that we've gotten out the door.
Correct.
In terms of violence prevention programming, we are continuing to collect that and analyze that. I think that's a much larger thing that we will still have to come back at a later date. It's not something we can easily digest.
Fair.
But it is on our radar to do that.
Good, yeah, because like I said, we're anticipating that, and I think it's fair to ask for that, information, and perhaps after, some things are done and so on and so forth. I know everyone's rallying and trying to make sure everything's pinned up and neatly put together, but, I would anticipate not every dollar, obviously, but at least the different buckets and having something that we can all look at and measure and, say, well, this worked out well. This one, who knows?
Absolutely.
Especially moving forward. But thank you, Mitch. You've been the face of this, and I've worked with you several times over the course of the last few years. I know we're going to see more of you as we complete this, but thanks for all your hard work and the team and everyone. And like I said, I guess I don't think we should do a victory lap just yet, but I think we should just be glad in that, right now it's looking as though we met our goal, and that's spending all of those funds that were made available. Thanks.
One other thing I'd like to add is that when we present the 2025 operating budget, we will specifically identify exactly what we've been talking about here in terms of we're setting up a new cost center for the projects that we've talked about. So we'll be identifying all of those kind of specifically when we present the 2025 budget.
You're welcome.
Just a little bit more if you have a few
Oh,
minutes.
sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, this slide really just sums it up, right? The city's obligated 100% of its funding. That's a major milestone. You're spent about 80%. The city has refined its obligation strategy to reduce risk and reallocated just about $8.8 million from select committed projects over the last month or so, over the last quarter. These contingency substitutions are primarily based on shifting Treasury guidance and best practices with managing federal funds, and largely that this strategy ensures that no wasted funds leave the city. And then generally speaking, this is an act of fiscal responsibility. And, as much credit as, I'm sure my bosses are willing to let my team absorb, I do want to highlight that this has been a partnership. We don't operate and you just send us the spreadsheets and we do all the things, right? This has been a partnership with many aspects of the city of Akron, and you've got some strong leaders and capabilities internally here. Lastly, looking ahead, also as you noted, Councilmember Fusco, there's still some work to do, right? So we're moving into the phase where we're going to be looking and pushing more at expenditures, right? There's still a December 31, 2026 deadline to make sure every dollar's spent, right? We feel pretty confident that will be hit, but we're there to monitor those expenses, make sure it's done compliantly, and make sure that any barriers to spending are removed or mitigated, in addition to impact requests. And we'd be happy to provide the city with our framework for sustainability, which really kind of looks at 4 different quadrants when cities are beginning to enamor, hey, we started this under ARPA with these specialized dollars. Is this something we should consider spending? We'd be happy to provide that to the city.
With that, any questions?
Real quick, just good job to the finance folks, as well as everybody, even from the very get-go, from the very beginning, who worked on this. Job well done.
Thank you.
Guys. Thank you for all your hard work on this. Yep.
Mr. Chair, Councilwoman Amobian has her hand raised.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilwoman Mobian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I changed my gadget, so I hope you can hear me better.
Okay.
With regard to the dollars with the intervention, the violence intervention, and all of those programs, and I know that we're looking at some outcomes from those projects. What happens if those organizations don't meet the outcomes?
So
What
we've had that, and I'll have to defer to Nico Buckley Knight more on this subject, but we've had a few throughout the years through the various rounds of funding that we did. I believe we did 3 rounds of funding? 4 rounds of funding, yeah. And there were a few who, if they weren't meeting the goals, we opted not to renew or go forward with or extend contracts. And we can provide an update on that shortly. So that was one of our solutions. And we reallocated through council, funds for other projects.
The same groups that were in the original, we moved some of those dollars to the ones that were performing well.
I believe in at least one case, yes, we did do that.
There's about 46 grantees.
Yeah. There is 46 grantees, and we are more than happy, but there is a lot of data that we need to unpack. And I do think that, Danico is better about speaking about that than I am right now.
Yeah, and that'll be helpful to know. And I'm still wanting more information about the home repair program. I think I've asked for that quite a few times.
So as an update on that, we have previously provided the list. We are in the process of updating the list, as that's part of the discussions that came up with the capital budget hearing last week. There's a few other outstanding items. I conferred with Ms. Helen Tomic about that earlier today. We're expecting to provide that in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I just say one final remark?
Sure.
So, this has been a great project to work on over the past couple of years. And it's interesting to see is how we've crossed this threshold. We've gone from more of the public-facing side of this to the internal side of it. And I just want to take a moment to recognize someone from our staff, Teresa Klein over here, who is our audit and budget manager and was recently promoted. So without her and some of the work, especially on the audit side of this, the piece that we don't get to talk about that much, this always wouldn't be possible.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Teresa.
Unless anybody wants to talk about it.
Okay, so again, thank you for your hard work and your presentation, keeping us updated and informed. With that, our Budget and Finance Committee meeting is adjourned, although we have coming up a continuation of our proposed capital investment program, those talks. Few minute break.
Yes, if we can give everyone just a few minutes and we'll get started with the capital budget review. Thank you.
Oh, okay.